It's like every time I make the next adjustment, the caramel would bloom. And so you have to have a sample roaster, make small amounts, find the individual caramel signatures, caramelized sugars, peak at that bean, if that's what you like. And we're going to go into the caramel bitter spectrum so you can make your own choice. Many people like more bittering, and I allow them to live. And I am a person that likes sweet things. I'm like a little baby. I have a little palate like a 6-year-old, and I like sweet caramel. And this is legitimate style, I think. Okay? The BRZ2 gives you the ability to roast completely with control and small batches, and they're still available. ProBat BRZ2, there's lots of them now, I think. But this thing is a workhorse. I don't do anything to it. How am I doing? Awesome. So, any questions on sample roasting? Finding your way. You know, you find a broker that gives you a small amount of beans. I started with a Brazil. You find where the caramel is, the caramel band, by tasting an espresso and cupping. Once you find the caramel band for that bean, and you want to use it in your blend, you lock it down. Well, you might wonder how to lock it down, and that's with programmable roasters. We're going to get to that. Go to the next bean. Espresso should be a blend. If you have a single bean origin coffee, it's marvelous, but after a while it's like a Christmas tree with one color light. It looks so good on the first day. You're like, why didn't we do this every year? And then you're like, oh God, what is with this? And it's the same with espresso. It's so concentrated that if you have a single bean coffee, you don't have enough complexity. But I'll tell you a secret. Are there any judges for the espresso contest in here? Good. I'll tell you the secret. I have a bean that when you first taste it, you just go, oh my God, this is the best coffee I had in my life ever. It's savory, like it has high umami content. Japanese word meaning roughly savory. Yeah. And as a single shot, if you're going to have one shot, it's like so good you just can't believe. If you live with that day in, day out for a couple weeks, you'll be, oh man, I want something different. So I blend using Brazil, and the Brazil is in there for spice. It gives me a spice note. It gives me a beautiful little hops note over the top so that I have complexity in my final blend. I have a 4-bean blend. While we're on to blending, let's go ahead and open that up a little bit. I have beans for sugar, beans for power, beans for spice, and then a bean that I just really like. So it's a 4-bean blend. And I'm always after, like I say, my aesthetic, my choice, sweet. That's what I like. And what I really want to encourage is for you to do what you like. Because who's into beer? I know some people are into beer. The beer thing is exploding on the West Coast. You've got so many beautiful brewers that are doing such a great job, and they each defend their style, and they each have a passion and commitment. That's the way this should be. It shouldn't necessarily be that everybody likes the same thing. That's nonsense. People should like what they like, and they should bring it out, and they should defend it, and everybody else is a moron, and I love that. That is so cool. That's the development of a culture. But in fact, there's limits, all right? And we're going to go into that. If it's acidic, it's defective. If it's burnt, it's defective. And briefly, the reason it's defective is it's acidic is because the acid acts upon the varietal flavors to destroy them. You do not have, if you have a Harar Makeda and you want that dark chocolate, little bit of honey and thundering blueberry, and you have it in the acidic stage, which is pre-second crack, and you taste lemony brightness, that is citric acid. It's sugars on the way to caramelization. They pass through a citric acid stage. That is a defect because you can't taste any blueberry or dark chocolate or anything that you purchased that bean for, okay? My roaster, and thanks for doing the screen, because the control box is on the left. This is a very special machine. It's a Diedrich CR30. It's like a Maserati. Because it's completely controllable, and yet it's powerful. Diedrich has an IR series up to 24. They don't have the power. The only one worth getting is IR 12. And you can get a 14-minute roast on an SHB like a Harar. The Diedrich IR 24 is too weak, and you can't get a 14-minute roast on an SHB, a strictly hard bean. You have to have 15 to 16. You got to adjust your batch. It's a weak machine. This is his first CR commercial roaster, 30, the smallest one. I don't think he makes it anymore. I think we got the last one. Well, I got a buddy, an engineer named Barry Hill, and Barry Hill is a monster. He's widely trained. engineer who's at the UW for a long time. And he says it's one of the finest machines he's ever seen for manufacturing. He's just a machine guy. He's got like 2 towers and stuff. He just has the works of art, you know. So anyways, this has a control box on the side. When you're roasting for espresso, what are we doing? We're trying to find our favorite roast and repeat it. The program at first, I'm not much of a guy that favors automation. I'm like, really, Steve? I got to get the programmable, and my roaster's like, David, his name is Dan, get the programmable, you idiot. And I said, and I talked to everybody, and they talked me into getting the programmable. Oh, God, am I glad. Because every week I taste, I did this morning, and actually one of my beans was a little green sticky. It's a little, you know, and we have to weather change. I can say, you know what? I want to go up a half a degree on the final temperature, and why don't you flatten out that curve between, you know, 14 and 16 minute, whatever. Why don't you flatten out that curve a tiny bit and bring me a sample? And so we can fine tune, and again, you're dealing with a brewing method that will reward them. It has the precision with these new machines to pick that caramel out every time. Wonderful world. I spent my career complaining, which I do naturally, about bad machines, bad espresso machines. Okay, so back to this. If you have computer control, you have repeatability, and you can help your roaster and you decide. Taste every week. Weekly tasting of every bean in the blend. I find during hot, dry weather, my ambient temperature of my coffee beans starting in the warehouse is much higher. Now, the machine does a pretty good job, but I usually have to tweak the final temperatures when I have the hot, dry weather, and then again when November rains hit. We have 2 changes per year, generally. Also, I can tune for individual crops. Again, I have my sample roaster. A lot of my day, or of my week, particularly at certain times of the year, is spent securing crops from around the world and seeing if they'll work in my roast. And we'll talk a lot about what works for my roast in a minute. Okay, so programmable CR30, a monster, a lovely machine. I can roast a bag of frozen marble in 13 minutes if I want. It's got uber power, okay, and I can control the outcome because of the control panel. So I don't recommend IR. It's just a world of roasters. Just make sure they got enough power to roast SHBs under, 14 minutes if you want to. Strictly hard beans, like a Carrara. The drying bin. When you roast, it is a Maillard reaction. And that's Louis Maillard was a French chemist. Now, a Maillard reaction, in the layman's terms, just call it roasting. But what it really is a very long list of defining characteristics. For the purpose of espresso coffee, we're very interested in the fact that it's exothermic at the end, the coffee bean. It produces heat. You have to slam it into the cooling bean and forcibly cool, which means if you want a precise roast, you can't really go too big on your roaster. I don't recommend more than a 30 kilogram because you can't kick off the cooling. The beans continue to roast themselves when you drop them out of the roasting bin because the Maillard reaction is exothermic. It produces heat. So you have to have a small enough roaster to stop that right where you want every time. And of course, when it's warmer, we have more of a challenge. That's perhaps why I'm having a thaw. Maybe that's why we drop at a lower temperature, because more roasting occurs in the cooling bin no matter how hard we try. And as a note, if you want your coffee to make it to your customer, you've got to cool all the way down. If you put that coffee in a bag even slightly warm, the process of osmosis, the traveling of the oils within the bean is accelerated, and you're going to have very easy sailing, 3-4 days. Shipping to Japan, I won't even do it in the summer, the roasted bean. I got one client that does it, said, all right, it's your money, but if the coffee gets hot or it's hot right out of the roaster, you only have 3 or 4 days, and you've lost it. And by the way, for my roast, losing it means you've got tipping. You can see some oil on the surface of the beans, and you start to smell metal instead of caramel. That's when it's gone stale through the process of oxidation, okay? So the cooling bin should be, the roaster should be small enough that you can forcibly cool, stop that reaction right where you want, okay? So it doesn't continue to roast. The other properties of the Maillard reaction in terms of coffee are that caramelized sugars are produced and CO2 gas is produced. So when you roast your coffee, you put it in a bag with a valve, and that's because it's outgassing CO2. That's what also makes our crema. Remnant of CO2 in the bean combined with pressurized water through there makes crema, right? So 85% of the CO2 comes out in the first 10 hours. Espresso coffee is not good on day 1 generally after roasting. Day 2, it starts to be good. It peaks on day 4 and 5.